We're at the second international conference on medical device safety risk management in Amsterdam, which was yesterday and today, and it just ended. And we heard from a lot of good speakers, and it was a very exciting conference. And so I asked one of my fellow attendees, Stina Johansen, to
Okay.
to come and speak to us about risk, benefit, and safety from a personal and professional perspective. She is a regulatory quality consultant. She's based in Sweden, and I'm going to let her talk about herself a little bit more and tell you about her background. But she is a lovely person, and she has a fantastic story to tell. Um, and
Put her on, put her on.
I'm putting her on. I'm moving. I'll be in the background.
Hello, everyone. Hi,
So
Joe.
it takes a personal visit to get you to come, huh?
Huh?
I've tried this virtually, ladies and gentlemen, in the past, but it takes the brute force and charisma of a Sean Smith in your face to
Right.
get you to come on to our call.
I couldn't say no.
He's undeniable. Well, I'm delighted, no matter what the reason, that you're here for us today.
And Luke.
And Luke, yeah.
And Luke.
No, I'm trying to know position, but
Are you okay? Okay. Well, hello, everyone. I think I've joined one or two of those calls previously. So we did say hello, but I didn't speak much then, I guess.
Today you're the star.
But I would like you all to chime in on this topic, because I think there are so many aspects to it. And so just to introduce myself a little bit.
So whomever among you.
I think he just turned it off. So yeah,
We're good.
we're good.
Okay.
My name is Stina Johansen. I'm based in Sweden, in Uppsala, for those of you who know where that is, just north of Stockholm. I'm also partly based in Copenhagen, since I'm married Danish, so I travel a bit back and forth. I'm a biochemist by training, have a PhD in medical biochemistry from Uppsala University. I worked 9 years in R&D at Abbott Medical Optics in the beginning of my career, and focused a lot on risk management and design controls and usability, that kind of activities. But it got me curious about, why do we do all this stuff? So that led me into regulatory and quality. So since 2016, I'm in the consultancy business, and since 3 years, I'm running my own business. That's a bit about me. Risk management is dear to my heart and has always been throughout my career. I've always been keeping on my own projects alongside with some management roles. And as Sean mentioned, I do have a recent experience that I would say changed a bit of my way, or where I would conclude a benefit risk analysis to be sufficient. And that relates to a recent episode of some quite serious healthcare experiences. I had a very small kidney stone that in 6-7 hours turned into sepsis and septic shock. And after a while, I had the kidney stone removed and get a precautionary double J stent implanted that within 12 hours migrated. So that was repositioned, and then after a couple of weeks, I had the second surgery, removed the stone, and got a new stent, and here I am after 50 days of antibiotics and both what I would say a mental trauma, but also some quite physical pain experience throughout this.
When was this?
Pardon?
When was?
I had the episode with the kidney stone I got in mid-February.
Oh, so right now we're talking about present pain and mental anguish.
Yeah. Soon, next week, I will remove the stent. So I hope I will be fine by then. But so tying this back to benefit risk analysis, to me, it's all about actually having tools in the toolbox for the clinicians, for the healthcare system, or for you as a patient to treat yourself. And I would say previously, I would have pushed for a more conservative benefit risk and balance. So with a higher benefit, high benefit to risk ratio in that sense. But based on this experience, I think a more moderate balance, a more even balance would be acceptable in very many cases, because you're better off with a product than without. But I'll take you up on that, and if I'm happy to be challenged on that. But it also ties into many of the talks during this this conference, where we've listened to fantastic presentations related to state of the art, standard of care, and this is what I call the toolbox for whatever health intervention or pre-treatment or prevented treatment that we're selecting.
You've been to many conferences. Did this one strike you differently as a patient?
Some talks, some talks really pointed out the importance of the patient-centric, and I think I think I see that in most conferences. There's often a patient presentation to remind us all about this is actually why we're in this business. This is why we like this business. This is why it's dear to our heart, why it's important for us. And but I think we need to be reminded over and over again. I think that it's so when you as a manufacturer do your benefit risk analysis, there are many things to think about that relates to what are you comparing against? So if you have a very novel device or novel design to your product that you maybe you have much more uncertainty around both the benefit but also around the risks. And Naveen, he spoke to this in quite depth, and he presented a very nice model on how to assess like the improvement of benefit, the difference, the delta benefit compared to, let's say, a previous version of your product or a standard of care, and then moving into a higher novelty, but also maybe a higher level, but still tolerable risk. But this is where the uncertainty also increases. But because of that novelty brings more benefit, you could accept that. That's one aspect of what you need to take into account in a benefit risk analysis.
That's sort of like in one company I was in, people died getting our product once in a while, but everyone died without the product. So we had to look at how many people actually lived and lived well afterwards versus died. And that was a hard one, but that's the kind of thing you're talking about, right?
Exactly. And I think that how you need to address how you collect and have that and how you collect and resonate and have that benefit discussion depends on what kind of product you're talking about. I mean, you would approach it very differently. So in your case, I agree, because I mean, without the product, that it was 100% death, right? So the benefit would be to prove that, well, we brought it down to 80%. That, I mean, you brought 20% benefit, right? If you ever put number on that. That's another aspect to it. We have very nice methodologies to assess risk in numerical, in quantitative ways. But the benefit portions, I see some people argue that you could also do that in numbers. I personally don't agree with that. I think that's more of a sophisticated, educated discussion based on many sources of data and many aspects to it. Again, being very knowledgeable about what are you comparing against.
Stina, I'd like to ask
Sure.
Today's talk is Reflections on Risk Benefit Management, and I'm wondering, is this a subjective conversation or an objective one where we can look at rules that help us guide what we move forward with and what we don't?
Both yes and no, because it will be subjective in terms of the reasoning and the discussion, the knowledgeable discussion in that actual analysis of the benefit versus overall residual risk. That is a subjective, but based on objective data, in a sense. Do you see where I'm my thoughts? Do you follow?
Yes, but I'm hoping that today's
Yeah, I was
discussion-
going, let's have a more concrete example, if you could.
I'm wondering if we'll leave today's call with something concrete that we can use to make a decision on whether to go, no go on a project, for example. Those of us who are in the business of supporting entrepreneurs and manufacturers, whether this is a viable project or not, personally, I might get approached to work on marketing or strategy for a project, and once I hear the value proposition, I say, I don't think this is going to cross the finish line, and I don't want to make this person spend money on my time and talent only to end up in frustration and loss. Is that where you're going with this, where we can somehow assess and have metrics or some kind of definition on how to make these decisions?
I mean, what we can use to capture the benefit portion of it, and that is FDA has published a couple of really nice guidelines, and one of them has a form that also Naveen spoke to, that where you assess the benefit, but you don't know who's where you assess the benefit, but you also assess the uncertainty around your data. So it's described in more depth in that guidance. I can provide a link later on. And the same goes for combination products, where if they are drug-led, you when you do quality risk management and you do the benefit risk analysis in your let's say an NDA submission for a drug product or a combination product, there you also discuss that uncertainty. So I would say that there are specific tools other than those guidances and forums. So it's not like we see a lot of software development on the risk side to manage all that data. It's not, because the data sources that you use are very different, and you need to merge them in your discussion rather than in a technique, so I'd say. You use your clinical data, you use your usability data, you use patient quality of life surveys, you use so as you can hear, there are many different kinds and types of this, how you describe the benefit of a product. So they're and in that sense, it's not either the like one process or one technique fits every product, every kind of product. I would say that the risk side and documentation and assessment of risk is much more streamlined across, I mean, almost any device or any drug delivery device, or even IVD products. A little bit twist to diagnostic products, but because it's more indirect risk.
Tell me, did you attend this conference were you a speaker, or did you attend with a specific objective to take away?
I was an attendee, not a speaker, but I mean, I think this is one of the very few conferences that has a high focus on risk management. as a special topic. It's usually included in many other conferences, but just amongst many topics, so say, or infiltrating, impacting other topics.
And remind me, you work for yourself.
Correct.
Can you take us through an example that you're, without divulging too much, a client example, something you're working on now, and how, what was the circumstance that brought them to you? What specifically did they request of you, and how you worked through that process? I think that would interest the group.
So I can give you an example where I've supported a client with the drug delivery device development through I joined that project in the verification validation phase. But we
had a prototype.
yeah, but so this just to give you a little bit of background, it was a combination product. So we can speak about the auto-injector version of it.
The
Auto-injector. So
auto,
like a pre-filled pen,
yeah. Okay. Mhm.
EpiPen, if you
Yes.
that kind of product, yeah. So the what I supported that project with was both on the quality management system side to bring together the product development from a drug development side and design controls procedure and risk management procedure to capture the iterations from risk management activities and the residual risk assessments. And especially so I joined that project quite late in the phase, you would say. So most of the risks that we assessed or reassessed, I would say, related to usability results. So usability evaluations. So you have to feed that back into your risk management process, and both the usability, use-related risk assessment, as well as the design risk assessment. And then tying that together with the critical to quality attributes of the overall combination product, or the ones that were pointed out from the drug products side of it. So how does variability change usability issues on the device part of that product? How does it impact the ability of the drug to be delivered? How does it impact the critical quality attributes of the drug? Do you have an impact on the injection system on the drug product properties, etc. And then eventually, after you've completed verification and validation activities, and you also, of course, gone through lots of the design transfer activities to the manufacturing site, you come to the phase of the project where you write up your submission documentation. So I support with writing up technical documentation for a notified body opinion assessment, as well as submission to FDA as part of the NDA submission.
And the project is now complete?
The project is under evaluation at the FDA.
Okay.
with a successful notified body opinion report coming out of that.
Are you finding any obstacles with FDA that are new these last 4 or 5 months, given the new administration?
I'm sorry, I can't speak to that. So,
Okay, fair enough. Luke, you're in the same room. What have you got to say?
Oh, but first you have to mute.
yeah, I'll mute on my side. So
Or walk over to hers and we can have a
Yeah.
twofer.
Okay, she's on mute now. I was at the same conference, but only for the second day because the first day Michelle spoke and I heard her enough. And I've been with Michelle and Ronald Bouwmans doing a tour through the Netherlands on the Wednesday. But today there were a lot of talks also about AI, and I was hoping that there would be recipes on how to deal with that, but it seems like it's still kind of black art. It's you have the usual suspects, like you have to look at your data and see that it doesn't have any that is not polluted. That you have to look at your cybersecurity and all the things you already know about software, and there are people saying treat AI just as any other software, but then more rigorously. Well, I think that's a good idea. But I hope to have a recipe there on how to handle that, but there wasn't. And even Karen Deep had a session on that, and he couldn't help me out either. So that didn't help. And what Stina said, there are a lot of efforts to quantify benefits against risks in a better way. Also, one guy from Philips who was in the 14971 standard committee, he said that there were efforts that to get that into the standards, and also have 2 substandards, one on AI and third one on, what was it? On combination products. So there's going to be multiple standards on that. But the quantification, I don't know. It's still a bit off. It's you comparing apples to pears, and there are some efforts, and it's going to be in the standard, but I'm not sure it helped much. It's all in the eye of the beholder. If you think you have something that's good enough, okay, then it's good enough, and let somebody else prove it's not good enough. So if you have confidence in your product and you're not afraid of any recall actions or whatever, then you probably can get away with it. Shall I stop speaking right now, or do you have any questions?
That was a good ad. Thank you very much.
Oh, I'm sorry. I also muted my
turn up the volume
my speaker. I can hear you.
now.
Okay.
Wait.
There's a joke in here somewhere, like how many intellects does it take to, I don't know.
So I was also at the conference. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Are you getting an echo?
No, not now.
Okay. So for me, the most exciting part about the conference and the most exciting part about hearing Stina's story was the idea of not losing sight of the patients. And James Pink gave 2 presentations on this, and he said, how many of you in the room have gone and spoken with your clinicians? And it was like half the room. And he's like, how many of you have actually talked to patients? And it was like 2 or 3. I mean, like, 20%. And it sort of brought home this idea of what we're doing here is not abstract. It is about patient safety. It is about improved outcomes. It is about, we are saving lives here. Literally. And so the thing that was deeply moving was that, but there was also a story about a combination product that was for people with Parkinson's disease. And Parkinson's is a debilitating disease that has a high suicide rate that goes along with it. And they were using a combination product, and the presenter said um, that that people use the device portion of the product to successfully commit suicide. I guess they use the drug delivery aspect of it to inject it with probably something poisonous or something like that and kill themselves. And so all of a sudden they had to report that this benign device that never had any deaths associated with it suddenly had 9 deaths associated with it due to suicide. Um, and so the thing is that, I mean, they were telling the story, and it was just making very, very clear to me that um, sometimes with benefit risk analysis, the risk is completely unknown and is completely unexpected. You wouldn't think, oh, somebody's going to use the Parkinson's treatment delivery device to commit suicide. Do you see what I'm saying? So that was one of the interesting stories. But the point that James kept bringing home today was this idea of talk to your patients, talk to your clinicians, talk to people, and find out, what is actually happening with your product. You can't do this in
Isolation.
isolation remotely, and figure it out. Jan, I think you would have been interested in how little they got around to the packaging, but yet they did get around to the packaging, and they it was part of the discussion, and so I was glad for you to hear that.
Yeah, then I'm finding in most risk assessments, they talk about packaging, but they cram it all together without actually separating that there's different risks associated with whatever they're talking about. And going in, especially pharmaceutical companies, going in and making them break it out, because sometimes it happens in production, sometimes with patient use, sometimes with shipping, and it all looks the same. But the damage all looks the same, but it's all caused by slightly different things. So that's the biggest problem I see with how they look at packaging risks when they're doing that. And I had an interesting thing happen with a friend who got an auto injector for her kid. It's some kind of growth hormone they had to do. Well, she was complaining because the auto injector, you could only use it once, and you had to dial in how much you needed to use. And it left a lot of the medicine actually in the injector that she couldn't use. Where if she had a vial, she could actually get what she needed and there wouldn't be leftovers like that. And I don't know. I told her to go complain to the manufacturer, not to me. And I don't know how they're looking at that kind of risk associated with use either for customers. So I just find it interesting, and I think HIPAA has messed us up to not be able to talk to patients like we used to.
That's an
And
interesting.
yeah, well,
That's
they're not. You can't talk to them unless they give permission.
that doesn't seem unreasonable.
True, but you used to be able to ask them something, or at least go in and see. Like when I used to be able to go in to watch what was going on in I don't know, some kind of room. I can't remember what it's called exactly, but it had a window so I could see how they were using products. And I saw a guy start crashing on the table, and they had to get a rescue type of situation out with products. So they were dumping things on the sterile table so they could use it on this guy and keep him alive. And the stuff wasn't coming out of the tray they had. which I found out real quickly wasn't my company, but it also helped me know what I needed to do for my company. But now I'm not even allowed in, it's the cat labs. That's what they were called. I'm not allowed to go in there because the patient is unconscious or semi-conscious, and we're not allowed to see them or even ask them ahead of time. So how would I know it's not working?
Mhm.
It makes it fun. Risk assessments are really good, but they're very limited, I think, because you can't see it all, and they don't always get all the right people in, and they're doing all this stuff. Sorry.
Not at all.
That's
But
Harry, you have something to add?
spinning on to that, I mean, the in multiple of the sessions, it was addressed that the importance of bringing in the medical patient safety competence into the cross-functional team, where when you identify what kind of harm this product can bring and assessing the level of severity of that harm. Because as an engineer, you're just not trained to do that. And the you can do that in multiple ways. I mean, in bigger companies, you would likely have that kind of staff on board in your company, and you would need to bring them into the team, and they are usually very I mean, they keep a high standard from a clinical perspective, but they are not all very well trained in risk management process per se. So you need to give them some guidance on in what context they are giving their advice or assessing that severity. So it fits within the risk management process as such.
Do you believe in splitting it up? Like, to me, the risk management programs that I've seen that work the best actually split like development from production, from shipping, from patient use and stuff, so that you could address the risks differently.
There are requirements in the ISO 14971 standard that you need to address all phases of life cycle management, all phases of the life cycle of the device, and so that's one of the reasons why you try to look at all that, because you look at from a design perspective, the manufacturing process, the storage, the shipping, but also the use when the product is in the hand of the users. I was thinking about another aspect to that severity, and we in this conference also multiple speakers, particularly Peter Sebelius, addressed the importance of assessing not only worst case harm, worst case severity, but actually addressing all the different harms that can come out from a hazardous situation, and assessing the severity to those different harms. So a bruise, a burn, a serious infection, to all the way to a more, permanent disability or whatever. And all of those severities, all those harms, they have different probabilities of happening to the user, to the patient. And that's important, because our risk analysis and overall residual risk gets distorted if we only assess what we think is worst case by choosing the highest severity risk line item, while the highest risk level may actually come from a moderate severity combined with a high probability. So that's a message being emphasized many times during those 2 days.
Or you've been very active in the chat. Would
Me?
you, yeah, tell the folks.
I see
to follow you.
Victoria has her hand raised too, but usually when you're doing your usability studies, which is where you get an informed consent, Jan, so you could go in and look and review all the packaging, because that's when you have your users look at the packaging and you've already received informed consent, and your usability engineers can go in there and look at it as your lay users as well as your professional users. But the usability risk analysis is going to cover your usability user interactions with the essential features and functions of not only the product, but the labeling, identify any use related risks and errors based on your real world tasks. So you have your critical tasks that you're looking at, as well as knowledge tasks that you're looking at. And then you're going to figure out if you've already mitigated the strategies and validated to minimize or eliminate those critical tasks and knowledge tasks. And then see, after you've done your usability tests, if you have anything else that you need to go back in and to see if you can fix it again. And the FDA has been really active in the last 3 or 4 months with looking at them. And I put in the chat, make sure you look at and include all of those usability in your, those standards in your, when you go in through your standards in the E-list, make sure you include all of those in your E-Star submissions, and make sure you've included all of those as your standards applicability list for your EU as well, not necessarily the FDA
Yeah,
2016 standard, but for your EU submissions, because I've cleared a lot of that ones under the MDR, but make sure you're looking at those. And in that FDA standard, it refers to another one, but they want that statement exactly that you've looked at them and that you've applied the standards that, and that your device complies to them in the minimum of 15 use risks with lay users as well as professional users with your IFU, and that you've looked at all of those and they've been mitigated and you've passed to 100%.
And I agree that the 15 to 30 people they use for the human factor studies is really good, but they have never included a packaging engineer that I know of to
Well,
know
that's the
what to
company's
do
fault.
with it.
That's the company's fault, and that's design controls, and that's why you need to start it out right to begin with. And the FDA is coming down hard on the submissions that I've been in with lately where they require it. So I just went through a huge one with a robot with a foreign company where they made the company go back through and regain pediatric neurosurgeons and the lay staff. And we had to go back and rerun those with, I mean, and it was pretty expensive for the company to go back and what did they say for, it was a South Korean company. So we had to boil the ocean again 3 more times for the FDA to do that. And it's tough to get pediatric neurosurgeons in a room again with the support staff and rerun that, but we had to do it for the FDA. So it's very
it gets
important
expensive.
to do it. Very expensive.
Yeah. I helped write the H79 from Amy, but I had a hard time getting him to put even the word packaging in the standard. So,
well, I mean, that's your IFU, that's your directions for use. And that's granted, nobody ever reads them, but you have to have it in there. And I've done it so much as with the lay users for an over-the-counter device that's sold at Walmart for enteral users, where it's just looks like you know, what are the kids are, you know, for applesauce, and it's just a screw top. And this is just screwing into your normal enteral feeding tubes. And the FDA was like, well, we don't think that lay users know how to use it. I'm like, a 2-year-old knows how to use it. It's what everybody uses in their lunch boxes. I'm like, you know, so that went wayside, and we already had it over the counter for, you know, it'd been on the market for, I don't know how many years for our, you know, RX only, and all we wanted to do is OTC, but we just had to demonstrate that they could do that with the packaging as well. So you just, it's a stupid, simple statement that they have in the 2016 guidance. And we had to put that exact statement that's black, and that's all the FDA is looking for, you know, so it's seems like a lot of work, but it really isn't. But you have to go back and readjust, like, you know, what you guys were saying in your labeling and the FDA is really not being that difficult. They just want to see it in black and white, and you just stick it back in there and you're done. Everybody's done. And in my
Victoria,
opinion,
you've been very patient. You had your hand up a bit. You had something you wanted to add, Victoria?
Hi. Yeah, I just wanted to go back to her comment about the risk assessment with the Parkinson's device and ask if you've considered consulting the Michael J. Fox Foundation on that.
Oh, this was an example presented by one of the speakers as an introduction, sort of setting the scene that when your a product treatment turns out really well, the patient regained capabilities that they didn't have in the beginning when they started their treatment. And it wasn't an ongoing project. It was just an example to set the scene. And the patients, they regained capabilities that enabled them to commit suicide. While when they started the treatment, they didn't have that physical capability due to the stiffness. Or
is there, can you put up a link to that study? Or
it wasn't my example. It
oh,
was
okay.
one of the speakers. Yeah.
Okay. It just caught my ear when you were talking about it. And I've followed the Michael J. Fox Foundation for a very long time. And I thought they might be, you know, the place to go to for
Sure,
something like
sure,
that,
sure.
you know, for modification of that device. So
Okay. I don't know how recent that was, or if that was a long time ago, but just a very sort of heartfelt and impactful example too.
It was.
Yeah.
And okay, thank you.
It made me think something that I haven't reflected upon before, that actually when you do your design validations and you do your usability studies, you need to capture all the different user profiles that your user groups have. So if your product is intended for healthcare professionals and caregivers and patients, you need to capture all those different profiles. And if your initial profiling, then after a successful treatment, shifts to a new profile that wasn't included in your design validation, you suddenly have a user group that is using your product that they did get prescribed for a long-term treatment, perhaps even lifelong treatment. And then they suddenly are not covered by what was validated when the product was launched. I never thought of it like that if you're so successful, you might end up with a new user group, in a sense.
Something that wasn't anticipated in the beginning, that all of a sudden now there's a new variable that's introduced.
Yeah, in a way, because so to take a less drastic aspect to that particular case with a Parkinson treatment, was that, well, with this successful treatment, people regain the ability to go mountain climbing or even just walk the stairs. What do you know? From being stuck in the wheelchair and being able to do normal things, but the initial patient population that you studied, they were all in wheelchair. So perhaps they didn't assess how would your product be impacted by the ability to climb a mountain, to stress your body to that extent?
Do they do a new usability study then, or?
I mean, this is just me thinking afterwards.
Oh,
But I think you could apply that to your project, to your product, to think that, okay, but what if we're successful in treatment? What will that impact what kind of stresses our patient, our user, our product is
yeah, I had that with a pacemaker. When people started feeling better because they had a pacemaker, they decided they wanted to go scuba diving down to 100 feet. And we had never tested pacemakers to 100 feet of pressure underwater because we didn't think
exactly
people would do that.
Yeah.
So we had to go and retest everything. And
yeah, well, you just have to expand your verification validation data set to new situations, new types of use.
And that some of the key themes of the conference were risk is dynamic, not static. And so that speaks to that directly.
Yeah.
It's contextual to the patient population, to the use environment, and to the clinical alternatives. And the regulatory frameworks are evolving to better reflect this nuance. Safety isn't just the absence of harm, it's the presence of proactive design, feedback loops, and transparency. In post-market data and real-world evidence are shifting the safety conversation. So what I heard over and over again was bring the patients in to the feedback loop early, and that safety and innovation are not opposites. You know, it was sort of like flexibility and dialogue are essential. Listen to patient voices in the process. Co-design with patient improves safety and acceptance, transparent communication of risk trade-offs, and is a trust builder. So the idea of building trust was really important. And so those were just some of the key takeaways that I had jotted down during the event. I don't know if that sparks anything for anyone.
I appreciate that. Sean, we're almost at the top of the hour. Do you want to spend just a minute or two with where we are with 10X as our leader?
Oh, okay. Well, I don't feel like a leader, but I doing my best. So we have a great program put together, and we have developed the workshops for everyone, and we're going to be sending those out. So the 16 people that are doing workshops, it's basically a framework for how to run your workshop. You get to pick the topic, the example, but it's just, you know, some basic guidelines. You can only do so much during a workshop. So what I want to stress is that, you know, it really doesn't matter if what you learn in your workshop is how to bake chocolate chip cookies. The idea is that you're working together to solve a problem, and that you're all collaborating and communicating with one another and getting to know each other in an environment that is less forced. The second thing is where we put out a call for startups. Many of you have volunteered to sponsor startups, which I want to thank you for. And this allows us to make sure that we get plenty of them in the room. I'm also reaching out to the OEMs in the Southern California area, Edwards, Medtronic, a couple of them, to try and get some of those people to show up as well. If you have other ideas, or or like, hey, you should invite so and so, he or she lives in the area, please let me know, because we really want to have a dynamic mix of people, and a lot of conversations, and I want it to be worthwhile for everybody. And as I discussed with Joe, I'm taking that very personally. So I hope that you all think for a second about, if you could invite anyone, who would it be? That would be my message. Thanks, Joe.
Paul?
Yeah, hey Sean, thanks Joe. Sean, I just sent you an email. So I got the $500 approved for the sponsoring of a startup.
Yes.
Can you respond to the email, because there's a little bit of a caveat. And the gentleman that just left, Mahavir Jain, I would like him to attend as well. I'll do an intro email as well, so you can coordinate with him.
Okay.
And I was
He's
chatting with
also-
him during the call.
He's going
Just for a reminder for anyone who might need it, I gave Javier the link today. I
Okay.
think is back the
Okay.
cutoff for the group rate for the hotel. So if anybody is coming and hasn't booked, that's the link they want. And I told him to do that, just in case he's able to come, so that he can get the lower rate. It's just 11 days away. It's the most wonderful time of the year. I've already got the ice cream order in. I was very specific about the toppings this year, so I'm expecting a really solid event.
And
And I've got my
$30
ice
a
cream.
scoop? Is that what you're at? $30 a scoop? I should not remind you of the pay.
I actually had a very tough love conversation with Hyatt yesterday. I'm actually, if you want, I'll indulge. You may drop off the call. This is the unnecessary part. So I called her up and I said, every year I get vanilla, chocolate, and chocolate chip mint. And
Right.
every year we throw away like a container and a half of ice cream. I eat like 5 portions because I hate seeing it go to waste, but there's just so much one man can do. So I said, you know what? Let's cut out the chocolate. Let's just do vanilla and chocolate chip mint, because we have chocolate sauce and people can chocolate up their ice cream. And so I'd like you to bring the cost down by 1/3. She said, okay, let me go talk to the chef. She comes back and she says, I'm sorry, the chef says we really can't do anything. You see, it's $25 a person. Well, that's before the 7.75% tax and the 16% mandatory service fee and the $175 to pay the man to scoop the ice cream, all of which are mandatory. And he said, the chef said, it's really on a per person basis, so it doesn't matter how many flavors you have. And I said, that makes no sense at all. I said, look, I understand. I have no problem paying for food. I have a problem paying for waste. And I can tell you, every time we throw away a container of ice cream, and it's just unnecessary. So I need you to go back and make this right. And she said, well, I'll talk to and I said, no, you don't understand. I don't care what the chef have to say. I'm the customer. If you want to see me again next year, you're going to figure this out. She's like, well, we really have. I said, okay, look, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'm going to select who among my guests can have ice cream. Okay. I'm going to go, you can, you can, you can't, you can't. Okay. I'm going to tell 1/3 of the people they're not allowed to have ice cream. So cut the number by 1/3 and multiply by 25. Okay. And that's what we'll do. And by the way, if while we're there's some leftover ice cream for some people who didn't have, you don't mind if I give them some, right? She said, okay. I said, because I'm supposed to put down a $12,000 balance today because I have to pay for what it is, plus 20% for any overage that might happen. So in 2 months' time, they'll give me money back. This is in addition to the money I've already put down. I said, so when you come back with the revised estimate, then I'll know how much I can pay. So I'll see that tomorrow. She said, yeah, you'll see it tomorrow.
Wow.
And I was like, this is fucking ridiculous. That like arm twisting saved me $700 for a fucking ice cream. 1 tub. Prices have gone up for ice cream. Everything has gone up.
By the way, you put me in that 1/3 because with my diabetes, I should be eating ice cream.
Okay, you're out.
I'm out.
Yeah.
I'm
And
out.
anyone else who's like on a diet of any kind, you are also out.
Guys, I gotta go.
You're not allowed to- I'm not allowed to bring candy bars because they sell those for $5 a piece plus the $7.75 plus the 16%. But I'm just thinking like I should just go to Costco and like hide like 50 Snickers in my bag and like hand them out on the DL to see what if they kick me out of the place. Andre, you know what I'm talking about. Okay, you got me started. This is not my fault. Paul brought it on.
Okay.
Stina, it took forever to get you to join us, but it was worth it. Thank you for joining. Even if it required Sean to meet you in person, be like, you don't understand. That's whatever it takes. I'll see many of you in a week and a half.
Thank you so much for having
Rest,
me.
we'll see you online at this time next week. Fan favorite, Nick Anderson is going to be talking about reimbursement for outpatient devices. And anyone who's ever heard Nick speak knows that it's a can't miss call. See you next week.